Okay, thank you. Okay, hey everyone. Let's see. Let me find the agenda. So this is ACDC number 166. It's issue 1740 in the PM repo. Here's a link here. And yeah, on the agenda today, pretty straightforward. Some Fusaka things, some Amsterdam things, and then a few other things around different EIPs and the process. So let's go ahead and jump into Fusaka. I thought I'd ask if there are any DevNet updates. I know there was some chatter on Discord across the week to this effect. There might not be anything. We did have the Haleski fork, which we'll talk about next. Anything on the DevNets that we should discuss?
Yeah, we tried non-finality on Fusaka DevNet 3, and we had non-finality for about 2-ish days and then healed the network again, and it's been finalizing since. I'm not sure if Barnabas had any other updates to add.
He says no. Okay, cool. Then let's move to Haleski. So we had the fork activation about a few days ago. And yeah, as far as I can see, it went pretty well. There was a little turbulence, which I think at this point is to be expected with testnets. Yeah, again, Perry or Barnabas, any updates there? Or anyone else want to add anything about Haleski? Do we feel like it went successfully?
Yeah, so we had the DevNet fork yesterday, and we've been keeping an eye on it. There was one incident halfway through so let me start from the beginning. As soon as the fork was done, we did notice a participation drop, but all of the participation drop was associated with missed updates. So once the updates were applied, we were able to hit back almost the same as before the fork. We're still tracking down the missing diff, but later in the day, we did notice one scenario where we're still figuring out what's necessarily going on. But there was an unexplained drop in participation rates. We went below 66% and then it came back up. Sam's posted a few theories, mainly to do with either missing or late blocks, and also associated with spikes in CPU usage, likely related to spammer kind of spamming in relative, like it has ticks to when it's spamming stuff. It could just be a combination of all of these factors. Also, most people tend to have something like 10,000 validator keys per beacon node on Holsky. So it could just be a combination of everything, but we still don't have a concrete answer for why the participation rate went down or how it recovered either. But since then, we haven't noticed any big issues. So yeah, like Boto says, there were a bunch of hiccups.
Yeah. When you were saying updates, you mean like just people updating to new versions of the client
Yeah,
they're running?
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. And yeah, there could be a number of reasons for this. Yeah, so it was good to see that. And yeah, it looks like it's pretty good so far. So I guess we'll keep an eye on it. The next thing there to call out is the first VPO scheduled, which is, let me just double check because I think I actually have the date wrong on the calendar. So yeah, that's on Monday, unless this is Tuesday UTC. Uh, anyway, let me not confuse people. But there's one in a few days. Yeah, again, check the blog post if you need the canonical time or any of the client configuration. So have that on the radar, and we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I think all in, we're moving along pretty well. So anything else on Haleski anyone wants to discuss today?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
yes, sorry. I was going to say I have noticed a drop in the network activity on base of validators on HODI. And I guess that was expected. And I wonder if there are any other metrics. I think it is interesting to see like the drop in the network usage, especially just before the next BPO. I don't know if we have other metrics related to that.
Sorry, is this for the whole ski network or the hoodie network?
Sorry, Holiski, like the after the fork.
Okay, yeah, maybe we can just chat about that on our group, and then we'll try and see what we have associated to the Bezu validators and see where we can help.
No, it is not an issue. It is more an observation that, in my opinion, was expected, like the drop in activity, in network activity related to paired DAS. So that was something that I noticed on the on Besu validators, and I was just wondering if that was the case and if we have like numbers. I thought it was interesting to check that specific metric just before the next BPO.
You just mean like total bandwidth usage?
Yes.
Yeah.
Did you notice this only on supernodes or also on full nodes?
Sorry, say it again.
Did you notice the bandwidth usage increase only on supernodes or only on full nodes?
It's a decrease. It's a decrease in the bandwidth. So we dropped like by more than 50%.
Yeah, but
Was
is it
that
a validating node or not?
Yeah, validating nodes.
was that exactly at the fork boundary? Because we shortly before the fork we started spamming blobs to the network. Before that there were basically no blobs.
Yeah, so that was exactly at the fork boundaries, just after the fork, actually. But do you see the same on other clients or not? Because I would expect to see the same. So basically a drop in the bandwidth usage.
We're still working on our bandwidth analysis, so we don't have that yet. But yeah, as soon as we do, we have it clustered per client, and then we'll have the report generated probably tomorrow.
Okay. Anything else on Heleshki? Okay. Then next up, I did want to call out this PR. So this came up from ACDT on Monday, and essentially, I think it was a couple different things in here. One of them is just having what we usually call like a readiness stock. So, you could imagine there's like a pure DOS readiness stock, which just runs through, these are the different checkpoints we need to see on the network before moving ahead. These are different tests we want to do, things like this. There was one here from, sort of across the whole lifespan of pure DOS development, and it kind of became, well, let's just say it became a heavy working document. If you go to it now, it actually links to a Google Doc that also has a bunch of stuff. That was one part. Another part is actually just copying over some of the process stuff that we put in place with Pectra. And most of this is relevant for mainnet. So I just started the PR and just kind of put down the skeleton here. We'll fill this in, once we're closer to Fusaka mainnet, but it's there. And yeah, I should probably go and clean up this readiness document. It's kind of a mess right now, but either way, I'll keep working on that. But just wanted to call this out. Again, it'll probably be more relevant as we get closer to mainnet, but that's underway. And Yeah, I think that's all we had on the agenda for Fusaka today. Anything else? I mean, in short, so far Helishki's gone well enough, and we're gonna keep moving forward. Okay. So then Glamsterdam. Um, I'm curious what people think. So we've kind of had this, uh, let's just say, directive over the past couple ACDs of saying, hey, we're focused on Fusaka, so let's, kind of not think about Glamsterdam too much. It seems to me, just kind of reading the room, that we're at a place now where I think we can start putting more attention back into Glamsterdam. Um, obviously, if some of the Fusaka changes, testnet doesn't go well or something, that will change. But it seems like we can start focusing more on Glamsterdam. So I would expect, kind of starting today and moving forward, we'll have more emphasis on Glamsterdam back in the different ACD calls. So to that end, we should probably start thinking about, the whole process. So what does that mean? The process here is getting the specs hammered out for Amsterdam. It's getting to DevNets and going from there. So one thing I could ask today is, how do we feel about the DevNets for the various headliners? I don't know if we want to touch on BLs today, but we can definitely touch on EPBS. And again, everyone's been busy with Fusaka, so if the answer is not much has changed, that's fine. But I would be curious for an update there.
An update on APBS or on block level access lists?
Sorry, on EPBS, yeah.
There's nothing that has changed on the spec side. There's lately a discussion of how to better enable trusted payments. We can have trusted payments just with the protocol as is right now, or there's a suggestion to add a field for off-protocol payments. That's the latest discussion on the spec, but the spec itself hasn't changed. We've been adding tests, and since we are finding still bugs on Fusaka, we cannot start merging on develop. I think Teku is the only client that actually has on their main branch passing tests. Prism has a branch that has passing tests, but it's on a branch. It's still not on the main develop branch.
Gotcha. Okay. So we're probably still quite a ways away from EPS DevNet.
It's probably not. As soon as we actually have a stable Fusaka branch, we can quickly merge all of Terence's work, and we will have some interop. And from the message that Stefan posted on Discord for Teku, I mean, probably Stefan is here that he can say, but it sounded like they are close to at least kurtosis.
Yeah. From Teco perspective, I wouldn't say we're close. I think we want to focus a bit more on the design of. I mean, passing the reference test is a good first step, but there's a lot of things that because the interop branch that we had before was very hacky. So I think I want to focus on like a proper design. So I think there's a while until we have DevNet, and since other clients are also not yet ready, I think we will wait a little bit and be more careful when merging to master.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, Pari and Barnabas are asking, or at least they're just pointing out we can run from our branch, but it sounds like what we don't want is to have, quote, a random branch that just becomes kind of unmanageable down the line. So makes sense to be a little more mindful with that, because we kind of got into the situation with Peerdos, as far as I understand. So let's not avoid that.
Yeah, we don't want to repeat what happens with Fulu. We really want to start merging on develop right now.
Okay. So then, yeah, we just need a little more time to get Fusaka even more stable. Well, I guess that's the question. Like, how much is it we need to like think about more bugs coming down the line with Fusaka versus it's just going to take more time to get to like a stable EPBS branch because we don't want to develop on the non-trunk.
I think we're going to be very close. We just like had a release with a regression, and that's why we are delaying, but we were about to start merging this Monday. So I suspect that next week we will be merging already and develop our GLOAS code.
Okay. And yeah, Party has a comment here. Are we happy with the design then? Unknown unknowns. I believe you're referring to the spec. And that also tees us up for the next thing on the agenda. As POTUS mentioned, and some others have been discussing this week, there's a question around exactly how trustless payments work in EPBS. Lenoscope, if you're here. Oh yeah, I don't know if you wanted to say anything.
Yeah, do I have time for a quick presentation?
If it's quick, yeah.
Okay. So, can you see my screen?
Yep.
Yeah, so like this is basically a call for discussion on trustless payments in EPBS. And quick context is that EPBS like brings two critical changes to Ethereum. One is payload separation, which is execution payload block separation. A lot of nice things. You separate the execution payload from the beacon block. You propagate and execute them separately for good pipelining. You get CL-side delayed execution. And trustless payments is another critical change that it introduces, where your builder becomes in-protocol staked entities, commit to bids, propose or fetch bids, and payment is first in the CL. So my proposal here is that we should either have a convincing argument on why trustless payments cannot and should not be separated from the current EIP, and that the complexity is worth it, specifically that there's no incentive to bypass it, or we should have a separate EIP between the payload separation and the trustless payments and discuss and decide them separately. Why I see two reasons. One is like that these two features fundamentally have different stakeholders. So payload separation, it's about slot restructuring and scaling. So core devs are the experts here. Like they know all about scaling and can run benchmarks and all that. And ecosystem, they largely depend on core devs for the expertise. On the other hand, for trustless payments, it's about fundamentally changing the block building pipeline. So I would say that the stakeholders are more the ecosystem players like validators and builders that are the experts and the end user of the feature too. And core devs, in my opinion, should take into account these expertise. And my impression from the outside is that a lot of the discussion has been focusing on the payload separation when Glamstra was being discussed, like what's the best pipelining solution and slot restructuring solution. I think there was fundamentally less discussion around the trustless payment part. And I think this is important in terms of governance. And one, I think, interesting case study is EOF. And I know that it's very, very different, but I also see a lot of parallel and enough that it's interesting. And I think EOF had different stakeholders. One is like with the core devs, and this was about removing tech debt and enabling easier upgrades of the EVM. And another was app and tooling developers, and they were like about the enabling better compiling tooling and also at the cost of breaking changes. My impression from the outside was that the former was convinced and the latter was not, and the end result was a loss for everyone, in my opinion. So the next reason I have is complexity and uncertainty. So like complexity of trustless payments, like in terms of spec and CL implementation, it's relatively simple. I would say still like conceptually adds some complexity because it's a new staked entity, but I do see that it's like not the bulk of the complexity in EPBS. But in terms of ecosystem impact, I think it's far from simple. Like it requires fundamental upgrades across the tooling, and also like staking protocols, their accounting contracts and infrastructure. And it also had like a fundamental impact on the builder market that is very unclear. And like you can see like this in different like write-ups from different teams, like Lido saying that it adds a non-trivial increase in the protocol complexity, especially if they have to maintain both like the in-protocol payments and off-protocol payments. And Yataitan is pointing out that it will also negatively affect competition and increase concentration by raising barrier to entry because you need to lock like liquidity upfront, and also like you always have the risk of losing it to everything if like your block doesn't land, and that all that risk is up to the builder. So like complexity may be worth it if trustless payments are actually widely used. However, I think bypassability is an open question, like referring to the fact that proposers may be incentivized to bypass the in-protocol trustless payment and instead use off-protocol options like MedBoost. And if we have like bypassability, rational actors will bypass, hence we'll be introducing this complexity for nothing. And yeah, so, and like does trustless payments, like one of the counter arguments here is that trustless payments reduce latency, so that's why it's abused. I think that the counter argument there is that current builders and relays co-locate, so latency is mostly negligible. The point on like that we shouldn't be removing MedBoost supports from clients. I think this was another like option that was raised by core devs, but to enforce trustless payments. But I think that's a bad idea because it will introduce like security risks here. So if trustless payments is clearly and uncontroversially accepted, maybe it's fine to just bundle it with payload separation. However, based on talking to ecosystem players, it is a fact that trustless payments is controversial. Hence, I believe they should be separated and separately discussed with the ecosystem, unless we have a strong convincing argument to bundle them together. And I think that's also a possibility. It's just that the people are not convinced. And I think if there's like even a single-digit % risk of ending up like EOF, I don't see a reason why we shouldn't separate. This is, yeah, my personal opinion. Yeah, so this is my recap of the proposal. And yeah, that's it.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, I think this is definitely a question we need to settle sooner rather than later. And like you point out, I do think there, yeah, are some arguments here to consider. Ansgar?
Yeah, I mean, just in terms of progress, process, I would expect we wouldn't decide something like this just today, just because that's so short notice. And I would expect that many people are probably quite strongly opposed to separating the headliner API out into two. I personally just wanted to briefly speak out in favor for such a split. I've had some troubles in the past with specifically the aspect that ePBS, just for historic reasons, nothing wrong with this, no fault of the champions or anything, but like it just morphed. It started out as something focused more on specifically like trustless payments and these things, and then it over time morphed more into being focused on scalability, because that's kind of where the trend overall went to, that we wanted to focus lump sum on scalability. But I had to look back, and almost all the clients that had a post on their position on ePBS, just before we made the headliner decision, specifically pointed out that they are supporting ePBS for scalability reasons. And so I do think that now puts it in this awkward position where there's this aspect of it which might still be a good idea. I personally am somewhat skeptical, but the point is it's kind of not, that was not part of the core of like why this ERP was chosen as the headliner. So I would really appreciate if we were to split out trustless payments and make the decision separately. It could still be included in Glamsterdam, but as a normal EIP that then has to basically like have one more round of discussion around it. And then, yeah, I would have my arguments for why I might caution against it. But yeah, I expect that there's a lot of people that are on the other side of this. So I feel like we should probably not make a decision like today, but in 2 weeks maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I think people will need time to dig into this, so I don't think we're going to decide today. But I did want to have the discussion. Yeah, there are a lot of moving pieces here. There's, I guess on the one side, core devs here, understanding some of these trade-offs and just getting, wrapping their heads around the spec and how it all works and understanding that in context. Then, another part of it would just be reaching out to the different community members that have been listed. I don't know, Greg here from Lido just had your hand up. So yeah, like different staking pools, different builders, and yeah, getting their take on the feature as it is. And that process will probably take some time to play out, just given how we can surface input to ACD from the community. And yeah, sure, Greg.
Yeah, hi guys, I'm Greg from Lido. Yeah, I just want to say that, yeah, I pretty much agree with the comments of Lynn and Ansgar. Basically, yeah, on the conceptual level of it. So I think that, as said, we have this kind of two different PPS. Basically, the one is the payload block separation and the other the proposer builder separation. And yeah, I think it would be a much more lean approach if we just have two separate things, because it's really conceptually separate. The one thing, the main reason of this is the scaling part, and everyone agrees, and like we have a very good consensus on that. Like it's a scaling feature. The proposed builder separation has like other consequences. It goes beyond the scaling. It's about censorship resistance. It's about centralization. It's other stuff. So I think it also logically makes sense to separate those two things, anyways. So yeah, I think it's very good that Lynn brought it in the discussion today. Yeah, and yeah, I agree also with thanks that we cannot take decision today, like it makes sense. But yeah, I think also like research-wise and logic-wise, I think it makes sense to have those two things separately, like to have a more gradual upgrade. That doesn't. It seems a bit complex to have two shots at one ape.
Yeah, thanks for the thoughts, Lion.
Yeah, I just want to voice that since 2 or 3 months ago, I find it strange that we didn't have the chance as client teams to voice if we wanted to get payload separation and trustless payments, or just payload separation. So yeah, I would support to have the split as soon as possible, so different stakeholders can clearly voice their opinion.
Makes sense. Yeah, Protos.
Yeah, so I think this presentation and this point of view lacks understanding of how the implementation on the spec is. Trustless payments is two different things. In fact, for that separation, just to have trusted payments, EPBS as is now is easier and safer and easier to implement than going trustless a la MEP boost. The reason being is that we want to have separation of broadcast. We need to have the payload being signed. I'm sorry that I'm going to be technical for a little bit. But to have that separation, if we keep without all of the machinery that EPBS brings, and we keep the MEP boost the MEP boost mechanism that we have today, then that incurs in a bunch of trade-offs of like going back and forth to share the payload and blind signing and all of this machinery that we have today just to prevent the builder from being unbundled. If we have EPBS today, just as today, no changes, Lido doesn't need to change their contract. Lido just needs to tell their node operators, hey, listen, only whitelist these builders. These builders are going to be paying you on the EL and are going to be bidding for one way on the protocol side. EPBS does not prevent off-protocol payments. It does not prevent a node operator from trusting a builder and whitelisting it. What EPBS brings, and now, having said so, that it's actually easier to have trusted payments on the EL with the current implementation and the specification of EPBS, it's also better for a lot of other reasons, because even if the builder is paying on the EL off protocol, is still signing the payload, and we can actually detect on-chain, we can detect censorship, we can blacklist particular builders even without having been the ones that proposed the block. We can do a lot of things that we cannot do without having a signature on the payload. So those are already reasons to have the on-protocol mechanisms. And at the same time, it's very simple to go off-protocol for the payment itself if the node operator just has. EPBS does not try to force an on-protocol payment. EPBS just gives you the option to have a trustless payment.
Okay.
And just in response to Francesco, is exactly what I'm saying. So the people that want to remove trustless payments, what they are saying is remove everything, like all of this withdrawal mechanism, the state builders on chain, and all of these things. It's not what we're discussing now on Discord. They really want to remove the whole. So they're calling trustless payment two different things. One is the stake builders, and the other one is the payment itself. And the claim is that the payment itself can be trusted on EPBS just as is without any change. And Lido doesn't need to change their contracts at all.
So just to confirm, like you're saying that you're fine with like in Prism, for example, like you just keep the Membu support
No,
and
we
fine
don't
with.
keep the MapBoost support at all. We don't have any MapBoost pipeline, but you can whitelist the builders that you're going to take bids from. And those builders are going to bid, say, one way only on the actual on protocol side, but they are promising me that they're going to be paying me off protocol. And this way, Prism doesn't need to do any changes on the implementation, and you just only whitelist the builders that you're going to be dealing with.
I see. But yeah, I mean, I think your point here is like that the trustless payment is critical for the scalability part. I think that's the part that a lot of us are not quite getting.
I am
So,
not claiming that at all. I haven't even mentioned scalability.
but the commit and reveal, okay, so the commit and reveal like difference, right? And you're saying that that difference is tied to trustless payment, or like,
Yes,
or do you,
doing commit
yeah,
and reveal with a signed payload by the builder is easier than doing it when the payload is signed by the proposer, because then we need to go the blind route, signing things that we haven't seen and exchange the payload and fill it as we do now with MedBoost. Doing it as it is on EPBS is much easier because the signature comes from the builder and the builder can reveal whenever they want.
yeah, I think, yeah, I think there's still the question of like, well, probably maybe we don't have time to go too much, but I think there's still the question of like bypassability, even if it's like in protocol cleaner, if they, you know, go through the trustless payment, like will they? I think that's still an open question. And if it's an open question, is it worth it? But yeah, I do see your point that with the commit real time being like 4 seconds, 6 seconds away, like trustless payment might have some advantage. But either way, I think like we need convincing about these facts.
Okay, so yeah, before we get too deep into the weeds here, it does sound like we should look at all these different, the different design decisions here, have some written document ideally of the trade-offs, and I think that would help drive the conversation forward. That's not going to happen live right now. So I'd suggest that's something that we work on async, and yeah, again, we'll see timing wise what that looks like. I don't know if anyone can guarantee that, by the next call we'll have this all together, but I do think we should keep this moving. Yeah, Terrence has a good point here. There is an EPVS breakout. It was next Friday. Yeah. So that would be another good check-in. If anyone wants to get deeper into this conversation, that's probably the place to do it. And in the meantime, yeah, I think we should, I guess to Ansgar's point here, just around the process, like what we don't want to happen is, yeah, something like EOF with the CIP. So I think we should be flexible around the actual ultimate shape it takes in Amsterdam. And that's a conversation that can play out in ACDC over the coming weeks. So I think from there, I think things are pretty clear on next steps. And unless there's a pressing comment on that point, we can move on in the agenda today. And in that case, so I think the last thing here for Amsterdam was, again, just this reminder. So we had the headliner selection process. we'll have a selection process for non-headliners for EIPs. And we had kind of said, okay, it'll be around Fusaka mainnet. I wanted to propose a refinement here just so it's like super clear exactly what we mean. I think the call where we set the Fusaka mainnet date, it would essentially be the next ACD call would be the deadline for non-headliner EIPs. So again, that shouldn't be a surprise to anyone, but yeah, just a reminder there. Okay. Yeah, Oscar.
Wait, yeah, just can you clarify this one more time? You're saying the call itself, so basically you're saying in 2 weeks we would set the dates, and that would then already, the call where we set the dates is already the cutoff time. Because it feels like I would have maybe expected that, say, on the call where we set the dates for the releases, we then also say, and that means that now we can set the exact cutoff time for EIP proposals. There's like one last week or something. I feel like it's better to, on the day we make the decision not closing, but like saying, okay, on this day, basically, like you only have like one last week. I feel like that's usually nicer than basically, yeah. But
That's
I mean,
what I meant. Maybe I didn't frame it well.
no, I probably just
So
didn't understand correctly.
yeah,
Sorry.
so yeah, like for example, say we decided mainnet today, then by next ACD, that would be the deadline for non-headliners. Right, so you have that extra week. Does that, okay, that makes sense. Yeah, there will be time. The point will not be, oh, hey, by the way, surprise, this is the deadline and it's passed. There will be time before that happens. So there's that. Okay, otherwise, there were a few kind of miscellaneous things around other concerns, either with the process of ACD itself or some, yeah, various EIPs or names. Anything else on Amsterdam before we move to that? Okay, so then the first one, this is a follow-up from last week. There was this proposal here from Wollovim, I think is how you say your handle here. And it introduces this concept of a champion that would essentially be point of contact for getting an EIP into a specific fork. There is a number of comments here going back and forth on some of the details. And ultimately, I think the language has changed a little bit. We had kind of wanted to get this merged in before today, so we haven't, and I wanted to try to get final comments today. Yeah, well, then I see you're here. I don't know if you have anything to add.
Yeah, hey, this should be very brief. The suggestion last week was to more formally define the champion title as the primary point of contact, and that a PFI'd EIP needs to have that primary point of contact, or a soft requirement for one. There was some hesitation on the usage of the word champion because it potentially gets overloaded as the word champion is used in EIP 1 sort of ambiguously. So I've just simplified the proposal to down from 3 sentences to 1, basically, in order to get PFI'd into starting with Glamsterdam. You should specify the primary point of contact. That's the end of the story. So this is just meant to be a logistics improvement, like hopefully a communication friction reduction. So I hope that's straightforward and agreeable.
Makes sense to me. Any final comments here with anyone at present? Otherwise, I'll take a look at the PR. But yeah, I think we're probably in a good place to merge. So yeah, I guess then today, if you have any final comments, take them to the PR. Otherwise, it'll be merged very likely within the next 24 hours, and we'll move that along. Okay, next up, there was a comment here from Kev. So, okay, I think this is actually just a very narrow process thing, but essentially with EIP 7870, this was around the minimum hardware requirements EIP. So just to move it from, let's see, from interview to live. Okay, so it's just moving it through the EIP lifecycle process. And I believe we just need to like agree on a ACD that we're doing this so it can be referenced. That's apparently what the editors requested. So yeah, anyone have any issue with that? Otherwise, we'll just go ahead and move it forward. Okay, that was easy. It's just changing the lifecycle status, so it's not really a material change. Next up, H star. So AB Kotup is calling out that H star needs a name, which I agree. And he proposes to have the name set by Pusaka going live on mainnet. I don't think we'll have any issues there. I will share this link. So this link here, there's a sort of informal poll on different names. And yeah, I would personally think just use this for signaling and go ahead with the most popular option, which right now is Helvetios. So yeah, if you have strong opinions on the name, I suppose take it to the ETH Magicians thread. And then from there, yeah, we'll get this sorted in a few ACD calls, just so there's a name and we can move forward with that. Okay. That was everything on the agenda today. Anything else people would like to discuss? Otherwise, we will wrap up a bit early today. Okay, great. Then, yeah, in terms of immediate next steps, we have the Haleski BPO1 coming up in just a few days, so watch out for that. And otherwise, we'll move forward on Glamsterdam. And yeah, I will see you all next time then. Thank you.
Thanks.